So we're talking about chatbots today, aren't we? And we're going to be talking, I guess, about how they are taking a part of the role today in terms of what we use them for, but also how they're going to play a part in the future as well of kind of workspaces and, I guess, home life as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's something that we've covered broadly in the past in quite a few of our different podcasts, but we haven't actually gone into chatbots themselves as a whole. So I thought it'd be something really interesting that we could cover. So we're going to be talking about what chatbots are first and foremost, because some people might not know what they are. I think we should go back to basics and what they're used for. I think most people have had some sort of experience with chatbots, so most people probably know what they are, but just in case you don't, we'll go through what they are and what they can do. We'll talk about how they work, and we'll also go talk about like the benefits of them as well. So the benefits from both sides as a user and as a business using them. And we're going to talk about how you can use them for sales and marketing, again, for the user experience. And as you said before, Scott, we're going to talk about how they can be used for the future.
Great. Covering the whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought we'd just take an approach of what a chatbot is as a whole, more than going into really specific details. So let's start with that simple question is, what is a chatbot? So a chatbot is a software app that uses AI and sort of natural language processing to help a user when it goes into anything digital. So it can, more broadly, you'll probably find at the moment, for most people's experience, that you'll go onto a website and you'll find it a little pop-up in the corner. There's usually I'm actually looking at Zoom right now, and there's a little messaging tab up there, which is probably a chatbot itself. Yeah, they're used on almost every site. You'll just see like a little messenger icon in the bottom corner. Click on it, and it usually comes up with a little box, and it says, "How can I help?" That is fundamentally probably most people's experience with chatbots at the moment. What's quite interesting about chatbots is how they're used in different ways. So chatbots fundamentally are used to delve into what the human actually wants. So at the moment, when you go onto a site, you might come across, for instance, I don't know, you might be buying something on a site. You don't quite know what you want. So a chatbot's there to actually delve down into that information and understand what you want, which I think is really, really important at the moment, because people are finding it very difficult to navigate the web as it's becoming more and more complex. So it's actually diving into that human experience.
Yeah, we see a lot of them on the marketing sites, don't we? And I think that's a lot of people's first sight of what chatbots are, and we're seeing them on a lot of websites these days, aren't we, where they just pop up and try and grab your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is mainly designed around for the end user experience, to make it easy for everybody. At the moment, there are loads of different websites, and like I said before, they're really complex. So I think the whole thing around chatbots is that they're there to make that complexity, or to basically destroy that complexity, and to make it easy for that end user just to go on any site they want to, use it as they intend to, without having to go through, I don't know, all the fluff, as they would say. So yeah, it's really there for that reason, I think, at the moment, for an end user. But as we talk later on, and we're going to talk about the future of chatbots, we'll also go into more detail about how they can develop into something more.
And I think they exist for good reason in the marketing space, don't they? Because traditionally, it's been so difficult for people to get to what they need, even for a really well-developed website, or even just as a user wanting to get in touch with the company. That's like been so difficult in the past. And actually, like, referring back to more text-based methods where people can just have access instantly to the information via something that's a lot more clever than they used to. It seems like a great way to solve that problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and also you have to think and I'll go into this a bit later on, but it's sort of that assistance that's 24/7 and it's on hand immediately. It's that immediate assistance that you get. And that's what's something that's so powerful about it, is that it doesn't turn off.
Yeah.
And humans turn off, bots don't. This is what's so powerful about AI generally, is that it never turns off, and it's continuously taking in data, and it's data it can continuously remember and learn from almost immediately, whereas humans have to do something repetitively quite a few times before they learn from it. But there again, I'm not taking away the human factor. You need emotion and you need humanity within certain parts of marketing as well, that bots just would never understand. You got a thing with bots and AI, it's all about algorithms and how many people repeat something. So the next thing I kind of want to go on to is about the types of chatbots you can get. Now, there's multiple ways. There's no one defining way of building a chatbot or one defining chatbot solution. Chatbots are mainly built by the business or by yourselves, if you are building a chatbot, to provide a service to your business. So it could be very, very independent on what it does. You could have it literally just for a personal assistant. You could have it for something that goes out and calls for you and stuff like that. But fundamentally, there are 3 different types. Those types are rules-based chatbots, which we'll see, which are designed by a user to take different set paths. So they will have keywords that will trigger them, and that trigger will tend it down a certain path, or the user will be guided into certain areas by this chatbot. So it just makes that user experience a little more easier to understand and navigate, by defining options rather than a bit more of a free roam. And sometimes people need that sort of pathway experience, if you will, to follow that. Then you have AI chatbots, and we've spoken a lot about AI before. Obviously, AI is continuously learning. So especially if you can get chatbots that have works within that can take information and details from other chatbots and a communal area of data, that would be even better. But if you're starting from scratch, the more that your chatbot AI interacts with the public, the more that someone uses it, the more it's going to learn and the better it's going to become. So you have that AI chatbot that's also going to learn how to respond to you in different ways, the most successful rate of communicating with the end user. And eventually it will generally just become better and better and better and more successful. And you'll see whatever you're using it for, it'll become more successful. So for instance, I mean, in this case, if you're using it for marketing, it will track results and the way and how it's going out to, for instance, if it's called cold calling, for instance, and it's using several different methods of cold calling, whatever's the most successful way, it will use that, and then it will analyze that that way that it's using several different ways it's using that method. What's the most successful way of that, and if how many responses it's getting, etc. And that's how it learns. It's basically analyzing data all the time. It's smart, but again, I always like to go back to it's not gonna take over the world smart. It's literally about data analysis, like analyzing and using that data cleverly, basically. And then we have sort of that live chat bot that most of us probably are using at the moment when we're going onto websites buying and selling. So I don't know, for instance, I went on to Vodafone recently because I was looking for a new phone. I saw the chatbot pop up at the bottom. So I wasn't sure if I was talking to a human or not, because it was written so well. So, a lot of them have this language behind it. But at the same time, you're not always sure until you get a response saying, can you keep it to one question, please? Because the chatbot is only designed partially around an AI, but also partially around that pathway and that rule base. So it only needs to understand a few questions to get you to the right areas. And they're usually the ones that help you with sales and development and getting to that right place on the site. So, those live chatbots are usually the ones that most people are communicating with at the moment. So those are the main 3 types of bots that you'll see. Again, like I said, they're not fundamentally the 3 types. Like, they can change and they can take bits and pieces from each one to become your own bot. There's no set rule to use one or the other. It's just how they kind of categorize themselves at the moment and how people are mainly using them at the moment.
That's a really interesting way to like bundle them up, though, I think. And I think that we so often think about them just as one thing, or people often conflate a lot of these. But if we, I guess, as you said, there's this kind of sliding scale of almost, I guess, intelligence in a way, isn't it? That you start with the simple ones, and then in the middle you've got the ones which are learning through AI and have layered some of that in, and then in the end you've got that blended approach where you're probably having some input from AI and some from actual humans talking to you. Am I right in saying that they would tend to also align with how complex the kind of user navigation or pathways are? So I'm thinking like the simpler, less intelligent approaches, they probably work really well when it's a very simple use case and there's only a couple of pathways. And then on the other end of the scale, you're going to need something that's probably a bit more intelligent if it's just a single catch-all for everything that a customer might want to talk about.
100%. I think you got it bang on there, really. It's like I said, it's all about what's right for you and what's right for your business, and what's right for your solution as well. So for instance, chatbots might not always be the right thing because you might have an amazing UX. It's so simple. Why would you make it more complex by adding a chatbot into that equation and, disrupting that UX? Because all of a sudden a person might feel that they need to use the chatbot as well as being able to navigate through the site. So you might actually be confusing the user because you're trying to make it too user friendly, if you will. And that's not always the best user experience. So again, chatbots aren't always the right solution at all. If you've got an amazing UX and it's really simple to follow, you've probably got a brilliant UX designer in the background. So well done there. Like you said, Scott, there are, and I'm literally about to touch on this in a second, there are loads and loads of solutions now that are becoming increasingly complex to the standard user. Not everybody is digital savvy, and this is where these chatbots can come in handy, from both a business side and from a user side as well. So, let's talk about why they're so important. The complexity of modern online software, it almost has a duty to provide that support. Before, let's take it back 20 years ago when you went onto a website. It was pretty simple. You had probably 4 main headings, which was like maybe about us, what we offer, our homepage. Do you know what I mean? That really simple, basic layout. Then it was to scroll down. You maybe had a few links that went off to a couple of sites. If it was e-commerce, it would be click on here, add to basket, go through. Now sites are really complex, especially with bringing in things like online apps, so web apps, mobile apps. Interactivity has become, well, for people who are digital savvy, it's become amazing because, you've got so much option and opportunity within an app now. But for, say, your average user from 20 years ago who was probably within their 40s and now within their 60s, they might struggle to keep up with modern trends and how things are developing. I know I struggle to keep up with modern trends. The digital world is evolving so rapidly at the moment that I think what you need is that hand to hold you and guide you through any sort of experience. And this is where chatbots come in. I think, again, like you said before, Scott, it's about what's right for your solution. But generally, chatbots are developing that more so down this AI route to kind of guide that user to get exactly what they want. And not only that, though, not only from a user perspective, but also from a business perspective. Because if you've got a really complex solution that works and you need it to be complex, but it might not be usable for everybody, this is where you have that guide to help that person go through. So let's go to a sales site, for instance. It's a web app. It's a closed sales site. You can dress up your avatar as to how you want your clothes to be put on it. It can tell you different prices and whatnot. Maybe that's not quite the outfit you want, but there's a massive range of stock that this person can choose from. All of a sudden, it becomes completely overwhelming, this whole experience. the AI in this chatbot can understand what you're looking at and what you're looking for and give you suggestions. That's probably one of the key things that immediately it can do. It can say, how can I help? You say, I'm looking for an outfit that's currently on my screen. An AI chatbot would read what's on your screen, and it would take data from what other people have actually used, and it'll give you pop-up suggestions. And then it can tell you, maybe you're looking for this as well. Maybe you could apply this discount as we're offering this today. And it would easily take you down a route where it would guide you through buying your items that you actually wanted, applying maybe a discount that you didn't know was there, and taking down a route which maybe you can even find the buy now button, and you get through to a payment section where it's saying, okay, you can do it by cards, or you can do it by PayPal, or you can do it by, I don't know, who knows, there's so many different payment platforms nowadays, Bitcoin, for instance. So it's giving you loads of different options. So as options increase, it's going to become more overwhelming for the user. And I think this is where chatbots really come in handy, especially for anybody. And because of the rapid development of technology at the moment, they're only going to become more complex.
Yeah.
This is why they're important, because they're there to build that bridge between really complex solutions and the average user.
Yeah, and like the holy grail for interfaces should be that things are so easy to use that they're just obvious and we don't need any help or hand holding, as you put it. But I think you're right that there are situations and various user groups that just find it difficult to interact with software. And I think we're now used to chatbots enough, aren't we, that actually when they pop up, it's not an unknown thing. They're a pretty easy concept for people to understand and know what to do with, just like you would with any like input field or button on a web page. You also know what to do if something pops up from the bottom corner, and I think it's just another tool that people can look to, especially for that kind of backup, as you say. Like the interface should be great, and then as a backup for those users that need a bit more support, there's an intelligent bot or interface that can actually help them a little bit further.
Exactly. And we've talked about it from a user perspective, but from a business perspective as well. Let's take it from an angle of, you're a new business, you can't afford to buy a personal assistant for, I don't know, say £25,000 annually a year. You can buy a bot and build that bot. You don't have to build it from scratch. There's plenty of solutions out there. I know Google do them at the moment. It really kicked off from when Facebook announced their bots from back in 2016, and ever since then I think loads of different companies have gone, we need to get on this. Mm-hmm. And there's becoming more and more different solutions out there now, so you can either buy them or you can build them, and they all work really well. So say you go out and you buy the Google Assistant bot, for instance, and you slightly change it to work well with your solution, immediately you've got an amazing personal assistant that can do the job almost as effectively as, say, you would if you just went out and hired a personal assistant. And I think this is great for when people don't want to have that, or can't afford to go out and buy that resource, can't afford to have that many people on board.
Yeah.
Thing with humans, and this is a really sad thing to say, going down this sort of digital route, but the thing with humans is, if you can't afford them anymore, you have to pay redundancy fees. It could really set your company into bankruptcy. With a bot, within certain roles that it can perform as well as a human, if once you buy it, you've bought it. I mean, there might be a hosting fee or something like that if it's hosted on a third party site, or if you have to pay for it monthly. But equally, once you cut it off, you just shut it off. You're not under contract with it anymore. You don't have to pay it redundancy. It's just gone, and it works for you 24/7. It's a really, really hard worker.
I think as well, like there are those more general personal assistants on there, and we're seeing those, as you say, become more and more prevalent now. But if from that small business perspective, if you're thinking that you're trying to free up your time to work on the more critical things, and you are considering something like a PA to take up some of that, a bit more of a generalist role that can take on some of that work, I think actually the more specific chatbots, the more focused ones, are probably a thing to look at as well. So I know you've already talked that you're going to cover this later, but things like qualifying your leads is a great way to actually save your time on the customers that just aren't going to be buying your services to begin with. The more classic chatbot example that I can think of from kind of internally is that kind of like support bot almost. So anyone that's got technical questions, especially new people on your team that you might need to handhold as a small business owner, and because you've been the key person dependency up till now, if you can get a bot to take on some of that that troubleshooting, that's great. And even, again, going back to that more external side, helping your customers out and putting some of the more support side of the business on to something like a bot will hopefully free up your time and reduce the amount of requests coming into your team to begin with.
Exactly. I mean, you think about it from this perspective, you've just touched on it perfectly there. You bring in someone new to your team. I don't know, for instance, for us with Fluff, we bring in a new developer. We have a virtual assistant chatbot in there. The onboarding phase that we would have to go through with that person probably could be like a week to 2 weeks, running them through everything they need to know. If you have a chatbot set up in that position, immediately you get them onto your platform, you say, okay, just say to the chatbot that you're a new user. Immediately that chatbot can send you to every single document that you need to go to sign up to register to. It can send you to every site that you need to know to register to, and it can point you into different types of important software that you're constantly using. So there's saving time as well.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it's perfect for.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people use it.
Well, like for internally, like you said, it's about setting up those systems, isn't it? And they do take time to set up. There's no question about it. Like even onboarding an almost out of the box solution for a chatbot would take time, but it's got to be worth it. And I think if you're thinking for the long term, especially when your time is restricted, setting up systems to have things run, by themselves pretty much without your involvement is going to be massively impactful.
Yeah. So let's go on and talk about chatbots and like the end user experience.
Okay.
So generally with chatbots, you're going to have increased in customer engagement. Chatbots are there to make that end user experience easy. Having an easy user experience makes a happy user generally will be more engaged with whatever solution you are offering. So that customer engagement immediately becomes greater because the customer is talking to a chatbot. It's telling, if it's for instance using that AI, it's telling the user where to go, what that kind of user would be interested in within their solution. Or from say our kind of site, for instance, if we're just offering digital solutions, for instance, what kind of digital solutions we can look for. It might forward them to maybe a nice article that we've written or one of our podcasts. You never know. Do you know what I mean? So it's, yeah. I'm not just saying this from an e-commerce perspective. I'm saying this from all different perspectives for all different types of businesses. You're going to get that increased customer engagement.
Oh, definitely. And I think like that, it's an often overlooked tool to bring out, because I think a lot of companies still reach for that kind of instant chat that you see actually on a lot of sites, and that's used everywhere. But the thing that a lot of smaller companies fail to think about when they first bring that in is that you need a team to support that. And ultimately, if someone asks a question in one of those and there's no human there to answer it, they're going to be put off. People expect pretty instant feedback, even when maybe the messaging around it is clear that won't be as instant as it should be. But actually, bots are a great first line of defense there, just to have some engagement. Like you said, if you've got something, even if it's not answering it correctly, or you should answer it correctly, but not answering it exactly maybe, but even just like taking you through the first steps of the process, having something that's just answering you and acknowledging you're even there is a great way to get engagement.
Exactly. And it's all about improving that customer support as well. I know you just said about, having that support there straight away, that people want a response straight away. And unfortunately, that is the sad world that we live in now. It's not 1950s anymore where someone writes a letter and they have to expect a letter 10 days later. We have instant messaging services. Everything's instant basically. So the only thing that isn't instant at the moment is is customer support. And that's exactly what chatbots can do. It gives you that 24/7 all around the clock instant customer support. And as soon as people feel like they're actually talking to a human, and this is where AI again comes in and it's really handy, because instead of having that, and I said before, that defined pathway of asking questions and it taking you down to a different solution, if you have an AI bot that's actually going to interact with you. And I've actually used some bots before, which I've been so impressed, because it's baffled me that I'm not actually speaking to a human before. It's even called itself like Andy before. You just think like, oh God, don't name yourself. But you know, these bots are just incredible. And if you feel like you've actually got that support and you're speaking to a human, and you say to this, look, Andy, robot, I'm really unhappy with this product. It's come damaged. It says, oh, okay, sorry to hear that. You know, can you take a picture of it and send it over to me? You take a picture of it. It says, oh yeah, I can see it's damaged. You know, AI is actually smart enough to analyze the photo to see what's wrong with the product. You know, there's a prime example, and it can organize a refund for you. It's absolutely crazy. And if you've got that sort of custom support 24/7 for any user wherever you are, it means you can operate in a global economy without having any issues.
I mean, can you imagine not having to have a support department?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as a larger business, you're probably going to have offices all over the world. But as a smaller business, if you want to operate globally and you only have 10 people, for instance, you shouldn't expect your department to stay up all night doing shift work. That's going to cost you money anyway, because you have to pay someone money to do the night shifts, which is very expensive.
Yeah.
Chatbot can do that for you easily. A good chatbot with a decent AI behind it.
And I think that's it. And I think the good AIs are getting much better at that. And I can actually see it from the other way as well. I think smaller companies might be a bit nervous to do that level of and I know that's quite an advanced use case, but I think, you know, that level it sounds like a dream to a lot of companies, but I imagine it can be gained as well by a lot of customers. And I'm thinking for smaller companies where they haven't got the overheads, getting, you know, 20% more returns because that aren't genuine, because they're faulty, but just because people, you know, decided that they broke it themselves, they didn't want to have any more. I imagine that level of overhead is quite scary. But actually for large companies, we're already seeing it, aren't we? Like with Amazon and companies that are like huge global scale companies, where they'll just take the hit without any, they'll just assume you're correct as a consumer without any impact at all, even if it's wrong, and they take a small financial hit because of the ongoing relationship and the fact that they don't need anyone to get involved and spend on that. So I think from both sides, and with AI getting much better to help reduce the amount of errors and the ways that people can get in the system, there's loads of scope for this to improve over the next few years.
Oh, definitely. I think the sort of the key fact that you want to take from a decent chatbot is it will be used and people can't tell whether they're talking to a robot or whether they're talking to a real human being. If they can't distinguish the difference, you've got yourself a decent chatbot there. And I think that's where people are really aiming for, and especially these larger companies who probably do have the money, like you said, to actually go out and invest into these solutions, whereas smaller companies, like you said, they might actually still want that personal touch, you know, they still want that customer support, which is fine. And, you know, they might also be a bit nervy about using that AI because they don't know what the hell it's going to do to their business. They've got quite a lot to lose if it makes a mistake. You know, you do have that sector as well, but it's definitely one of those things that if you've got a bot that the user can't tell whether it's human or not, you've got yourself a good bit of software there.
You do, yeah, but, absolutely. And like, where do you think? Because you mentioned about not being able to tell the difference between a person and a bot. Obviously, we're seeing branding being taken a lot more seriously by companies now, and actually personality is a big part of that, just the way that a company presents itself and speaks. How much of that do you think is a factor with bots? Is that important for companies to consider? Is it as, you know, even going as far as that Andy example, is it important for people to try and brand their bots around them, or do you think that's less of a concern with how we're using them as consumers?
It's a good question, but I actually think it's really, really important. I think that people need that human touch, and they feel like they need to be heard. When you're talking to a bot, there's always going to be that back end that the bot can't sympathize. So in the back of your mind, you're always going to be like, this bot can't sympathize. And I'm not just talking about from a complaints perspective. I'm talking about even from a buying perspective. You're going, oh, I really want something tonight that's actually gonna, I don't know, help me look good. I don't know where I was going with that, but you want that human touch, that human sympathy, that human emotion behind it. And obviously, if someone knows they're talking to a bot, they're just not going to bother because they know they can't engage on that level.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you build a bot that can engage on that level, but it's doing it statistically, so it's answering from a statistical point. So it's been asked that question before, and it's actually worked. You've got yourself a successful bot, and I think that's what you really need. You need that bot to act like a human.
Yeah, it's a dangerous,
it's a scary thought. Yeah, it's a really scary, and it is a dangerous thought as well. Like,
because you don't want to get it wrong, do you? That's the thing. Like, if you start introducing empathy from an AI point of view, and you get that wrong, like that has much more implications than just not introducing it at all.
Huge, and it needs to be tested thoroughly. And again, this is where I've said it before, far too many companies, developers, I'm not blaming you all, but a lot of you do this, is you create stuff and you never test it and you throw it out there.
That's what testers are for, aren't they?
Yeah. they never exist, apparently. And then before you know it, you've got this buggy version that every user seems to be testing. And a lot of the time the solution doesn't work. So I think with bots, especially when you start introducing things like sympathy and emotion, it's never going to be real sympathy and emotion. It's calculated sympathy and emotion. So it has to be perfect. It has to be spot on. And you don't want to get to a point where some humans think they're talking to humans, that they start not over sympathizing, but how can I say it? If someone starts sharing stuff that the bot can't handle, then you've got yourself dangers as well from there. So
yeah,
I know we've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but it can be dangerous. It really can be, but equally it needs to be right, and and if it is right, it can be really, really effective.
Yeah, and not to go down this tangent much further, but hey, I'm triggered now. I feel like I need to speak on behalf of all developers here. But seriously though, I mean, like, it's a good point you make, because AI is a very difficult field to test, really. And software testing aside, I think it's difficult to know exactly what the output's going to be unless you keep it, going back to your 3 models, right at the very predictable end, where you can test almost every pathway through. And as soon as you start introducing any intelligence into the mix, it's really difficult to know where that's going to go. And I think it's naive for companies to think they can just pick up, even, again, coming back to like an off-the-shelf type chatbot, and not think about the rest of their systems as well, because we operate in very, very complex situations and landscapes where it's not just the chatbot, but then it has to potentially tie into like a CRM that may be all over the place to manage the customer relationships. It may then also have to tie into like an ordering system that might not be up for that level of integration. And it's worth a company just seriously, because you're right, it's a dangerous thing to put out without thinking about what the negative impacts might be, especially if you never have any level of human interaction in the mix, and you're just letting your chatbot effectively put people off. So it's definitely worth considering both sides. And I think you're right, like there's tons of good opportunity when you do bring them in, but it's worth doing it right, I guess, is what I'm coming to.
Yeah, I think you have to have that balance really from both sides. It's more about, like, a chatbot is there to function and to support your business. Yeah, it can have that sympathy element to it as well, but that balance has to be right. It can't be over sympathetic, it can't be over emotional, and it can't understand sympathy and emotion too much or in too much of a detailed way, because it might start using that wrong. And bots, like I said, they work statistically, so it will try and use emotions and sympathy, etc., maybe in the wrong way. And it's taken millions and millions of years to develop human emotion, sympathy, and how we interact and stuff. You can't expect an AI bot or a human bot to be able to do that. Maybe in 3,000 years, when we've developed them to a point where they can walk and talk like humans. But for now, no, they can't do that. So we have to be really careful about what the standard responses would be when we're building them, etc. And we'll also have to go into around personalizing that user experience as well. From chatbots now have to probably use data, a lot of data, to figure out who its customer is when it comes on to personalize that experience. And I'm talking from any business perspective as well. So from that end user experience, or even if you're like I said, if you're onboarding and stuff, it needs to understand who it is. So it's sort of those prying questions at the beginning that need to be really, really clear and concise to understand who that user is and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like I said, it might say to you, are you new to the business? If you've just joined, for instance, as that personal assistant approach. If you say yes, then great. If you say no, then it's going to take down several other questions. It's going to start prying in before it can actually figure you out and what you're here for. So those immediate questions have to be brilliant. And I think that if you can personalize that user experience up front, then immediately the rest of that user experience within that solution or whatever you've built is going to be brilliant. It's going to be really good. But it has to figure out who it's using first, not just the generic user. Otherwise, you're never going to get the customer engaged as much as you want them to be. It can also act as a personalized search engine. And this is where I'm thinking that I've read something earlier about chatbots being personal to people going forward. So like that, we talked about this personal assistant, but I mean, we kind of see it at the moment, and I'm going to touch on it later with this sort of virtual voice assistant with things like Google, Alexa,
right,
Siri, and all that. So we kind of have that at the moment, but it's kind of integrating both chatbots with that kind of technology as well to work for you, but also work for businesses. And this is where I could see something like Google saying, right, we work with affiliates and amount of businesses. We can use our chatbot across those businesses, put it on every single one of our phones, and then we can use that chatbot to navigate you to the right business, to navigate you to buy what you want, or to, if you're looking for something. And then you've got that sort of personalized search engine, that personalized experience coming right down to you as a user. And this is where you could see it more becoming a chatbot as an extension of someone who then can reach out and can be connected to all these different sorts of businesses. So it's one chatbot for multiple solutions instead of multiple solutions having their own chatbots, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. That's like a really interesting thought, because I think like many of us, the personal assistants the digital assistants we have are pretty light in their ability to do much for us.
Yeah.
And help manage our lives. And obviously alarm bells these days start ringing around data concerns and the sharing of data. But if you take that away for a minute, I mean, the impact just to improve people's lives and help us to make decisions and to follow up with things that we meant to follow up with, and just help us across everything, and like really personalize our experiences across different apps and different websites. A kind of global central place that we could do all of that would be really powerful.
Yeah. And I did mean to talk about this a bit more later, but I've jumped the gun a bit. But yeah, it's something that I just think it fits well with what we're talking about now. But it is something that could really happen in the future. There's quite a few case studies out there that are explaining how they could combine and how that they could work within the future. And I think it's really interesting. I think it's scary, personally, how much of our data and how much of us is going out there into a digital world that's not secure. And I think it needs to be policed first in a much better way than it is. I feel like at the moment, the digital landscape is a bit like the Wild Wild West. anybody can do anything, and it needs to have that level of policing. I don't feel that it does at the moment. You know, you have personal policing. I feel, for me, I don't know about you, Scott, but when I go onto the web, I feel like you buy something like your malware blocker and your spyware blocker, and basically any sort of, like, you know, you've got your Windows Defender and stuff, and they're kind of like your mercenaries that are going to help you follow, they're going to follow you around from being attacked from people within the Wild Wild West. And I know I'm completely going off chatbots at the moment, but like, I feel like that is how the digital landscape is perceived at the moment. And before chatbots can go out there and be like all free with your data, these, you know, I think that landscape needs to be policed.
Yeah. I mean, there's been various schemes, haven't there, and governmental schemes that have been introduced lately to help with the data security aspect. I think it has helped to raise awareness, and there are, you know, a lot more tools now being created, especially by the big players, to help you manage your data, you know, have visibility to it, and actually get it deleted if you want to as well. But yeah, my main concern, and this is a total tangent, but you know, the main frustration with a lot of the laws and controls that are introduced really to help consumers and help customers are just often paid lip service to. Either that, or they go to the point of implementing them. It's like the cookie banners that everyone sees, and everyone just immediately dismisses them. You know, these huge pop-ups come up on the site, terrible from a UX perspective, and everyone just clicks them and just ignores them. And yet we all still complain about our data, and you know, so there must be something missing, and we can't blame consumers for that because everyone does it. So it's just, there's something wrong between the UX or the laws, or I don't know, somewhere something's gone wrong, but we haven't quite figured it out yet.
Definitely. And I think there needs to be a complete overhaul and redesign of how the infrastructure works to better maintain security out there. Because it's become its own thing. It's become its own entity, really. And it needs to be policed. It's too big, and it doesn't get policed enough. And it's kind of every man for himself out there at the moment.
But like you say, it's a shame though, because if we did get that right and consumers were a lot happier with sharing their data to the right parties, then it unlocks a whole new level of what we can do with technology.
Exactly. And this is where chatbots would definitely be able to thrive. But unfortunately, at the moment, we're kind of held down by all that at the moment. So now I want to kind of talk about chatbots with sales and marketing. And this is where I think chatbots could be really great for a new business. You can add a lot of value through more precise lead generation. So if you had an AI chatbot, or even if you didn't have an AI chatbot and you just had your standard chatbot that was sending out cold emails, and it was sending out cold emails, cold messaging, maybe through instant messengers, services and stuff like that. Whatever, it got a response back through however many different messages it does send out, and through the different types of messaging. Again, it takes that data on board, it analyzes that data, and it keeps sending out. It's doing a job for you that, I know everybody hates cold emailing, cold calling, and B, it saves you so much time and resource, like so much time and resource.
Yeah,
Scott, you and I have spent hours and hours going out cold emailing, cold calling, not getting a response, whereas a bot can send that email out within seconds, where it would have taken us 20, 30 minutes to try and write an email that's really personalized to that person, to whoever we're writing that email to. Mm-hmm. And you know, it just doesn't always work. This is something that a chatbot can do in seconds, and it can say, and it can get out to so many different people, and it can analyze who you want your customer base to be, can find those people, and it can attract them. So immediately it can add so much value through just precise lead generation, and it can bring so much business about.
I think, you know, you mentioned time there. That is a key point, isn't it? Because a lot of businesses starting up would think that, you know, too many leads is a nice problem to have, but actually it's almost the same problem as not enough leads, because it introduces this issue of having to qualify every one of them and not having enough time to do so. And that qualification can be difficult, can be really hard without putting any thought into it. You know, it can be multiple conversations and meetings, potentially in person if we're out of COVID, with a client, and that takes a lot of time and effort and resource. And I think you're right. the right amount of steps, and there are other ways to. Chatbots are a great way to help just walk someone through the first initial few questions to qualify exactly what they're there for, who they need help with, who's best to approach them, and if they are actually good fit for your business. And I think it even ties in pretty nicely with things like social media marketing, where that's obviously taken over cold emailing and cold calling to a large extent, but we can also then still direct people through a contact button or whatever else when they eventually want to actually get in touch with your company through that process of just qualifying them. So yeah, I think it's super valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can really help your business. Like you said, even from those who do respond to these cold messages, like whether you're actually going to be able to help them or not. And it saves you that, like, so that time again of going on a call or going out to have a meeting to realize that you two are both on very different wavelengths, and immediately you're not going to be able to help them. And that's wasted your time, and that's wasted a lot of money that you could be spending on other things. So it, like I said, it is, again, it's that personal assistant perspective that you can have it, that you can use it for, and immediately it will really help, bring about that business when you don't have time to. So
totally agree.
It's a really handy thing. Another thing about it as well is integrating chatbot data with other marketing practices. This could be so important, I think, because you need as much data as you can. So if you're continuously feeding back data and your chatbot's analyzing data, it can train itself to become really precise in what's working and what isn't, especially around your business, around your solution. So if you've got several different marketing practices, if you've got several different ways that you market, it can say, right, well, this worked really well within email, so let's try this within I don't know, say video advertising, but we'll just slightly change the messaging around that video, for instance, and immediately, like, it is kind of creating that much more effective way of marketing that data and marketing your solution.
Right, yeah.
I'm not saying it can go out there and edit a video, by the way. Video probably was the wrong thing, but I'm talking more around the messaging around the video when you first send it out through whatever means necessary. It might have been saying, well, actually, I've been doing loads of emails, and people have saying they actually really like to use Facebook as their main advertising tool, so I'm going to put that video on Facebook.
Yeah.
So it's more around that kind of stuff. It can be really complex, but if you can get them enough data being fed back into it just, because the more and more data that feeds back into it, the more and more useful it'll become. So you want to get engagement up within that chatbot first, more than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really, I said before, it's cold calling can be completely tedious. So again, even if you don't want to do it, it's just good to then write your emails. It's good to send out those messages. Actually, I don't know if anybody's had them before, but you often get these. I've had it a couple of times. Google tried to start doing it with picking up orders, I think it was, but where I think Google Assistant can start ordering you some food and stuff. I know it only works in the US at the moment. It doesn't work over here, but it could be really good for actually cold calling as well in the future. But again, it's that thing that it just takes away from. I think that cold calling is a bit more tricky because you want to feel like you're talking to a human, and you just know that you won't be.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where they'd really need to make perfect, really, before they actually start sending out.
Yeah.
Again, we spoke about it earlier, but targeted marketing using AI. So when someone comes onto your site or your solution, they use your chatbot and they provide a little bit of details. Immediately, you know exactly what they're looking for, exactly what they want, and you can start sending out information to their email addresses if they've obviously subscribed to that. If they've come onto your site immediately and they say a few things, you know that the type of user they are, so immediately they can start advertising a certain amount of things within the chatbot itself at the time. And that's all targeted marketing. That's all targeted marketing as well.
I think especially when you combine it with things like retargeting. So if you've had someone that's visited your website and then you manage to get an ad up in front of them through remarketing sources, that might be a great opportunity to put a chatbot message that's highly specific around that when they land back on the site. Chances are that they're wanting to engage at the point that they click on your ad at that moment. So yeah, it's going back to the engagement point. It's another tool you can put in your toolbox to try and see if it works for your proposition.
Yep, absolutely. From a sales perspective, 24/7 customer support and sales. I think, and to me, this is key if you're in an e-commerce business. The fact that you've got that support, and I would really invest in an AI at this point as well to make that sale for you. I think that it would consumers shop all times of the day and all times of the night now. It seems like there's no set time between 9 to 5 anymore, or people are working around this sort of agile way of working. So, and I think agile way of work has become an agile way of life. So whenever people find a bit of time, if they've woken up at 3 a.m. and they can't get sleep, they'll jump on their phone and have a look at something they can buy. You want that customer support element there 24/7. You want that sales support there 24/7, and that's where that bot can really come in handy and say, all right, you've come on 3 a.m. It's not a problem. We can sort out whatever you need straight away.
Yeah.
You wake up in a panic because you haven't bought a cake for the next day and you're looking for a personalized cake. As a small business, if you've got that bot who can say, all right, well, we can do that for you. It can put in the order, it can design the cake for you, etc. Next day, it gives out that order ready for you to, for whoever owns the business to come in the morning. It says, yeah, we picked up 3 orders during the night from people who are panicking who forgot to buy their cakes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it says, you need to build this, and this, or bake this, and this, sorry.
Yeah. E-commerce is a funny place, isn't it? Because it's so competitive that small businesses really, really do find it hard. They're forced to be, like you say, 24/7 and highly available at all times, just because the competition is. Even people that want to support local, chances are, like you say, I've recently had a child and up constantly at all hours of the night trying to order stuff just because you're awake. And so often it's you'll try and do something and then it's like, well, that's not working. Let's just go over to Amazon because it works. And it's an option that I know is easy. And it's exactly. Crazy, but you have to be operating in that environment if you want, that level of kind of success. So
exactly. And I think this is why it's so important to invest in it. So important. And I know that it can help with sales. It really can. And you want, even if you're not a salesman yourself, if you have a website and you're a 2-man business and you don't have time to be online continuously providing support, this is where that bot can come in and really handle your sales completely, the complete side of your sales. From a more complex sales, so if you're selling a solution, for instance, or you're selling, and you need to have more of those complex conversations, like I said before, it's great for those initial cold calling and that sort of initial conversation where it's trying to find out what your customer wants. But it won't. I can't see it helping in the finer details of a project and figuring out scope, etc. So maybe it can to a certain extent, but not to what you need to do. So you'll probably have to have those conversations, but especially from an e-commerce perspective, absolutely amazing. And it can also be integrated across multiple platforms as well to reach a wider audience. So it's not just about it being on one solution that you have. So it's not just about your website. It can be on your Instagram, Facebook, so all your social medias, be on anything really. Be on your apps, for instance, any if you've got any phone apps, it could be everywhere, and it can be running simultaneously across all 3, 4, 5 different platforms that you have. So it's one of those things that it can work for the user, and immediately it gets at that engagement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in all, really, chatbots come down mainly in 3 forms, and we talked about this earlier. So you've got that initial rules-based chatbot, which is obviously designed by Selected Paths again. So, it probably asks you one question, and then it'll say, actually, can you just ask one question and make it more simple? And it'll take you down several different paths. It doesn't think for itself, but it's there to guide you. I have the AI chatbots, which are going to learn from who you are. They're way more complex, and they're way more likely to develop, and they're way more likely to be able to help you and in several different ways, from a business perspective to an end user perspective. And then you've got the live chat sort of sales and development, partially uses AI, but it's just there to kind of to guide you to a sale, really, and maybe give you a few tips or recommendations, etc. So you've got that blended approach.
Yeah.
Chatbots are good for both end user and business sales. It's good for the end user experience because it handholds. It doesn't stop that older generation from not being able to use more complex solutions. It's great from a business perspective because it can drive engagement, and it can do stuff that you can't do, that you literally don't have time to do, and it can support you in ways that you can't afford for a human to support you to do. It can support with your sales as well, and it can support with your marketing 24/7 around the clock. So it's a 24/7 support tool, and it has a great part to play because the wheels in motion have already been set. And I wanted to speak about how chatbots are also being used within sort of an online economy now, with things like blockchain and Coinbase, where they're using Bitcoin. So they could be used to be managing this online economy, for instance. And if chatbots can start doing that going forward, you can find almost that people will be able to have a tap into this resource. And this is what I said earlier about chatbots being personalized. If you have that chatbot that's personalized, but also helps run the economy as well, you've got that huge integration of safety where you're just literally traveling. That Coinbase platform is a safe haven to then direct you directly to a third party provider, whoever it's going to be, whatever you want to buy, for instance, and can bring you back. So you always have that continuous safety, and that's where government is actually governments, not just our government, but all governments have been looking into, is developing this sort of online economy and how it can increase safety and stuff like that. So that's really it from chatbots. It does get a lot more complex. I've tried to be as broad as I can, and I know we've gone off on a tangent a couple of times on this. There's a lot to cover with chatbots. I would suggest going out and doing a bit of research yourself if this has piqued your interest, because it really, really can be an invaluable resource if you get it right. So it's definitely something that if you would like to invest in, do a lot of research first, understand what's best for your solution, and then go out and see if it works.
Yeah, that's been really useful though. And I think my main takeaway from it is just that they are so, I think so broadly placed, aren't they? They are useful for such a variety of reasons, beyond what most people would just consider the use for them. And pretty accessible as well. I mean, they're easy to pick up these days and to use in a company of any size, aren't they, really?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's great. Thanks so much, Ollie. I think that wraps us up for today. And so our next episode will be out, as always, in 2 weeks. So join us for that one. We'd love it. It really help us if you could tell a friend or a colleague if you enjoy. Please share. That really, really helps us. So yeah, thank you for that. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for joining us today.